Don't be afraid to call into your local office. Those people are there to It's been 2 decades or more since we went to market value and use, and a lot of people are still trying to figure that out. 3 things that a taxpayer should do: check your deduction eligibility, check the property record card accuracy, and do both of those things every single year. But most people aren't willing to go out there and research for themselves, which is one reason why this podcast exists.
Hey everybody, welcome to the second episode of All Things Assessed. I want to thank those who reached out, said that they think this is going to be a good thing. Who knows? I figured if this helps just 1 or 2 people a year, it's worth a couple minutes of my time to go ahead and do this. On today's episode, we're going to talk about something that's just, I was going to continue to work my way through slowly, and we were basically going to get through the process of reading a property record card. What are improvements? What are land values? What goes into land values, the different types, and all these things. But I've had a lot of people asking questions because right now there's legislation proposed that's changing a lot of things when it comes to taxes, property taxes. There's not a ton to, SB 1 is the bill. It's 2025 in case you end up listening to this podcast in the future. Basically, Mr. Braun, the governor of the state, his bill, as it's been tabbed, SB 1, was originally going to overhaul a lot of stuff, and now it's went from the Senate to the House with a lot of amendments, and it sounds like Mr. Braun is not happy with the current status of it. A lot of other people are not happy with the current status of it. I'm not going to get into the politics of which side of this bill you should be on. I think you should research it, find that out for yourself. But it's caused a lot of discussions on forums, on social media pages, and I continue to see a lot of the same misunderstandings about assessments, what assessors do, how they're directed, what governs their assessments, property taxes. Are assessments only rising because of taxes needed, or counties are telling, all these different things. So we're going to kind of go through that, and we're going to touch on property tax caps, because that is one of the most misunderstood things, and it's outside of the assessing realm of things. The assessor sets the assessment. That's it. The auditor calculates taxes, and the treasurer collects them. People get mad at the assessor for things that they do not control, and likewise, people get mad at the assessor for things they do control, which is fair at times. Assessors are not some perfect individual, and I think a lot of people are going to realize very quickly that I am not one to just blindly support all assessors. There are some very questionable ones out there, and there's no perfect one out there by any means. So let's delve into this a little bit. I'd like to start with one of the most common things that are out there right now is the simple fact that the schools are going to the assessor and saying we need more funds. The county councils are saying we need more funds. And basically the assessor is chasing a value in order to create a tax burden that they are trying to hit, a quota, if you will. Assessors, when they set their assessments, have no clue what the property taxes are going to be, or the tax rates that are going to be applied to that assessment. They have no clue. They have no clue if there's going to be any referendums at that time. There could be a referendum in the fall, 6-7 months after the assessor sets the assessment, and then that referendum pops up on the tax bill the next year. There could be special assessments that pass that are going to be applied to the tax bill. There could be tax laws that change, legislation changes that occur that impact the tax bill that this assessment value is going to show up on. And let's actually talk about that timeline of things. So nearly every assessor follows the preferred recommendation from the state, and that is every single spring prior to May 1st, the assessor is going to send you your Form 11. We touched on that a little bit in the previous episode, but just in case you forgot already, your Form 11 is your notice of assessment. It's 2025 right now. It's middle of March. This April, myself and every other real estate parcel owning individual in Elkhart County and all other counties that operate this way are going to receive a Form 11 for their parcel or parcels. It's going to have the 2025 pay 26 assessment, your January 1st, 2025 assessment. Assessors are right now working on that. Elkhart County just got their numbers, we believe, completely certified by the state. We're double checking some things, and then we're going to probably be cutting our Form 11s here very soon and getting them out to taxpayers so that way they see them and they have more time even to decide and have those discussions with the assessor proactively about whether or not they need to appeal their assessment based on subjective or non-subjective reasoning. And that's the key. I think legislators were very smart for having us always pay taxes in arrear. Yes, it gets a little messy when you're settling sales agreements between a buyer and a seller, having to deal with prorations. And if there was a homestead one year but not the next year, a good broker has to take that into consideration. But from a normal taxpayer's year-to-year situation, it's nice to know that you can get your assessment a full year before that assessment's going to show up on your property. For real estate, your property tax bill that's going to get mailed to you. Again, that offers you a chance to do the things that I said in the last episode. Look over your property record card, make sure the data is correct, and also kind of review and test the market value in comparison to that, and possibly appeal if you desire. There is some jurisdictions, in case you're listening. I know Marion County used to always do this. I don't know if any others are, but you don't get a Form 11. They don't operate that way. They send you your tax bill, and you have to pay your tax bill 30 or 45 days, whatever it is, after you receive your tax bill. And you're going to have to pay that amount. You can appeal it in the meantime. Your appeal deadline is June 15th then that same year, whereas in the deadline for 2025 assessment appeals, if you get your notice of assessment in a properly timely manner before May 1st, your appeal deadline is June 15th. So if the assessor's office in your jurisdiction sends out the 2025 Form 11, say April 7th of this year, you have until June 15th to appeal that. If they get them out to you April 29th, you have until June 15th. If they get them out to you May 2nd, now you don't have until June 15th of this year. You have a full year until the next year. So May 1st is an important and crucial time to keep in mind, because it kind of governs when you can appeal that assessment. Your assessor, if they're worth even a little bit of value, they should be able to walk you through that and explain that to you. But that goes to show that the assessor has no idea what your tax burden is going to be when they send you your assessments, when they work on them, because they are not beholden to the tax burden. The tax burden does not influence their assessments one way or another, and it shouldn't, because I think you would get into some potential corruption of assessors chasing a tax burden, chasing a value, in cahoots with councils, or, who knows? We all know that politicians and people in positions of power sometimes abuse it. But assessors in general right now, they have to chase market value. That's been that way since 2002, which is the other thing I wanted to bring up and discuss on this episode, so there's some clarity. Right now, you see a lot of people saying that, the assessor is chasing this value, and the only reason assessments are going up is because the property tax caps that we voted into place, which were also misunderstood, which we're going to discuss, they had to do something. So they're raising the assessments because they can't raise the taxes if they don't. And that's not true. Tax caps, the market value, chasing market value, if you will, to use the terminology that a lot of people do. We didn't go to a market value and use state assessment structure after property tax caps. We actually went to market value and use 6 years prior. So in 2002, we went to market value and use, and that was in response to a taxpayer winning a landslide case, finding the old assessment structure unconstitutional. To not delve into it too deeply, the old system, the assessment was not beholden to value. It did not matter, really. It didn't matter as long as your data was correct. There was really nothing you could do in most cases. It didn't matter if it was high to market value, low to market value, and it just seemed wrong to a lot of people. So it went before the courts through an appeal process, and it was found that the assessment style in which we were using in the state was unconstitutional. We went to market value and use. I tend to prefer market value and use, not highest and best use. Those are two very different things. Maybe that's a future episode we can discuss, but not to get on too many side tangents. Market value and use is at least very easy to understand to most people. Everybody knows a good, and a house is a good, it's just a really big one. And sometimes the biggest purchase of our lives, usually it is, that we understand goods have value. We understand that the price of eggs goes up and down. The price of everything is influenced by not only demand, but other tariffs and laws and things of that nature can play a factor. So we understand value. We've been buying things even before we were out of our houses from our parents. As kids, we were buying candy bars and such. So market value and use came to be in 2002. Property tax caps didn't happen until 2008. And by all means, look this up, Google search that. You'll see, Google search, when did Indiana go to market value and use? And Google search, when did property tax caps become a thing in Indiana? And you'll get the answer. So a lot of people need to stop stating the actual reverse of that. They're claiming that assessors are going to market value only as a response to this. That's not the case. Assessors, if they were doing their job, they should have been adjusting their assessments to attempt to get to market value since 2002. It shouldn't have been just since the property tax caps went into place. Now let's talk about the property tax caps, because that's a hot topic. One of the most misunderstood things that I hear taxpayers tell me every single year is that they thought taxes were capped. And they really are. The issue is people grossly misunderstood what the tax caps meant. So what the tax caps didn't mean, that a lot of people thought they did, was that, say my taxes one year are $1,000. I get a tax bill, $1,000. That governs, based off of that, my taxes the next year cannot exceed a certain amount. If it's a 1% tax cap, $1,000, my taxes this next year, they should not be more than $1,100. And what people find out is that's not the case. And that's what's frustrating to some people. They misunderstood. They thought it was a year-to-year cap. It's actually a yearly cap. So an annualized cap that's applied individually each year to your taxes. And yes, they do exactly as they were described to do and as they were written to do. So let's say you have a $100,000 house and property. That's your homestead. It's your primary residence. You have a homestead filed on it, which means you're going to get the homestead deduction. So you have $100,000. You're going to take $48,000 off of that because the baseline homestead deduction is now $48,000. Now, if you have a property that's valued less than $90,000, it was when it was $45,000. So I'm assuming it's $96,000 now. You get half of it off. So if you have a $60,000 primary property, you're going to get $30,000 taken off, not $48,000. $48,000 is just the maximum you can get. So your property has to be worth $96,000 or more. Double check me with the auditor's office in your local jurisdiction, because it used to be $45,000 and that meant your assessment had to be $90,000 or above. I believe when they removed the mortgage deduction, that was $3,000 and basically increased the homestead to $48,000. They also bumped that, which would make sense. So getting back to our example, we have a $100,000 property. We have a negative $48,000 deduction. We have a net taxable assessment at this point of $52,000. Now, there's a second part to the homestead deduction, and it actually shows up on the bottom of your TS1 where the deductions are listed. You're going to see homestead and you're going to see supplemental. Supplemental comes with the homestead, and I've always been told, there is a value point where this changes, but I've always been told just use 35% as the deduction here, additional deduction. So you're going to take 35% from the $52,000, and that's going to give you your net taxable assessment. So now we basically have two values. We have your $100,000 property assessment times 1%, because it is a 1%. It's a 1% tax cap property. It's my primary residence, residential primary residence. Those are the only 1% cap property types. That equals $1,000. However, when I take the actual tax rate of the property times my net AV that we just calculated, that equals, let's say, $600. It's going to be the lesser of the two, which means my taxes for that year are going to be $600 plus any voter approved referendums, possibly, plus any maybe stormwater fee or conservancy fees or things of that nature that can be legally tacked onto your property tax bill. But the tax caps ensure that my taxes on that property will not exceed $1,000. So let's say my tax rate is so high that when I take my net AV times my tax rate, it actually equals $1,200. Whoa, whoa, whoa. The caps say, nope, this property cannot be taxed higher than that $1,000 for its property tax contributory tax burden. I hope that made sense. This is going to be a really hard thing to follow, possibly. If you're just listening to the audio version of the podcast, hop over to YouTube, check out the video, get on Facebook, and you can watch it. I'm going to try to throw up the math on the side of the screen here. But I tried to walk it through slowly and clearly. Basically, the way you can remember it is property tax caps are not a year-to-year thing. It is a each year application of the tax rate. So some people benefit from them, some people don't. And the tax bill does display both. The tax bill, I believe the wording of it, I should have actually had one tangible, but it's like maximum taxable amount under tax law or cap law or something like that, and then actual or something like that. So it's always going to show you the two different calculations, if you will. And if you're ever curious, since I'm picturing the TS1, or what I call the TS1, it's the tables on your tax bill that break down everything. You can always look right in I think it's table 4 or table 3. The biggest one down on the bottom with all the percentages, it's going to show you where your taxes are going. School, library, fire, all kinds of different things. So if you're ever curious on that, you can check that out. The Gateway website is a public information site that's also a very great resource for taxpayers who want to do some research of their own on this as well. Maybe I'll go into that a little bit. I apologize that this episode had really very, very little to do with assessing. It had more to do with taxes, but because people get the two things mixed up tremendously, I thought maybe this was a good place to start. And there's a lot of conversations happening right now. And hopefully if you listen to this and then you see some of those conversations, when people start saying that assessors are just chasing a value because of a tax burden, or they had to do this because of the tax caps, you can be like, wait a second, no, that's not actually true. We went to market value and use in 2002, which was prior to the tax caps. Or you might be able to help somebody understand now, what do the tax caps actually do? They're not what people thought. They're not a year-to-year thing. They're an each year individualized tax cap. And maybe that's going to change. SB1 may rewrite all of this and make this episode a thing of the past. We'll see. I promise you, if they amend anything and it changes some stuff, we'll sit back down and I'll try to make it digestible and understandable for everybody watching and listening. This is Ty. God bless and be good to one another.